Welcome to the next Danocan video, continuing our little series here in the Alberta Badlands near Drumheller. Behind me is one of the most photographed churches in the entire province, inside one of the most iconic ghost towns in the province, Dorothy, Alberta. So here we go. This is the Catholic Church in Dorothy. According to the dates on the sign, 1944 to 1967. This has been really nicely restored / preserved. At one point, this church was very derelict. I will try and remember to post a photo here showing it in its dilapidated state. So it's been lovingly brought back to life. And right across the road is the second church here in Dorothy. I believe this one was a United Church. And yes, this is actually the older of the two, 1932 to 1961. This church here was also in a very derelict condition and in danger of being lost before restoration and preservation efforts brought it back. You actually can see this church and a couple other scenes in Dorothy in Tom Cochran's music video for Life is a Highway. And I'll put a quick clip in here if I remember, so that very short so I don't get copyrighted. I've been meaning to do an entire video on the Life is a Highway music video, just haven't gotten around to it. One of those many projects that's always sitting on the back burner. Multiple guest books here. We'll be sure to sign in. There's a little write-up on the history of the church. Last service, 1961. And it talks about the restoration efforts in 2011, 2012. First wedding inside the church after the restoration in 2012. Here's some photos inside showing the restoration work. There's definitely the view that I remember when I first came to Dorothy of what the church looked like.
Emily was here.
Here's some reflective shots of the church prior to restoration and during restoration. And just over here is this talking about the history of the church, explaining this was originally Wilford School, built in 1912, which operated till 1933. And then moved into this location and started church services in 1944. So not sure what happened during those 11 years, when exactly the move took place. But it took a while, and then closed in 1967, before restoration began in 2006. And just over there, the Dorothy Community Center. And you know, I've talked before on the channel about the National Film Board film Every Saturday Night. Well, the Dorothy Community Center can be seen in that film as well, with the Badlanders playing a dance on a Saturday night. And there's a couple shots in there where you can actually see Dorothy with 2 grain elevators still standing. And over there, the yellow bridge, that bridge was featured in the Ghostbusters Afterlife film as the entrance to the mine. And I actually have a full video that I'm working on about the filming locations that were done in Alberta for Ghostbusters Afterlife. So someday I'll get done and I'll do a much more in-depth look at the bridge and compare it to shots from the movie. So stay tuned for that someday. And here is Mashin Brothers store, which operated from 37 to 79. It burned down in 1962, so the existing building you see here dates from 1963, and as you can see, it's currently for sale. So you want to own a piece of Dorothy, this is your opportunity. And I have called this one of the most photographed cars in the entire province of Alberta. This old Valiant here. Taken many pictures of that car over the years. And it hasn't moved in that entire time. There are still some residents in the town of Dorothy, so it's very much like Rowley in that sense of you have to be respectful and careful about where you're walking. It's not a free-for-all. There is a lot of private property still out here, so pay attention to where you are, and like I said, be respectful when you're here. And there she is, the Dorothy grain elevator. I believe dates from the 1920s. The roof blew off the cupola back in a windstorm, I believe, in 2015. And she has been deteriorating ever since. I've, of course, filmed it and droned this multiple times, taken countless photographs of it over the years because it is such an iconic grain elevator. You know, it's been featured in movies, advertisements, you know, all sorts of different media. It's a really famous site here in the Red Deer River Valley. It's really incredible it's still standing. I mean, it's in rough shape, very rough shape, and getting worse every year. So if you're in Alberta and you're in the Badlands region, I highly recommend you come by and take a look at it, because it's not going to last much longer. It's sad, but I know there will come a day when I will hear that this has either been demolished either intentionally or it has collapsed, or yeah, it's not a good chance of survival for the Dorothy grain elevator. So I'm going to show you something kind of interesting about the grain elevator here. Now, if you know grain elevators at all, on our left side would be where the driveway was, where the trucks would come in and dump their grain, which would mean on the right side is where the trains would be loaded. But if you actually come down here and look, you'll see there's really not any room for a train track between the elevator and the highway. Like, would be a very unusual alignment. And the reason, my understanding, is that actually this highway is basically been realigned and uses the old rail line as its alignment. And the highway, or the road into Dorothy, used to come in from the north along the hills and then come in on the back end of town. Now, I don't know if that's for sure or not. I've never looked at maps and done any research, but it would be very odd for this train line to be nestled between that highway and the grain elevator. And you can kind of see, as the highway shoots up the hill, that it's been clearly built up there to reduce the gradient. So obviously the train tracks would have carried on through and down the valley there, where the highway's now been built up and covering where the train tracks would have run. Structure is at extreme risk of collapse. Sad, but true. So with that, time to roll out of Dorothy and get on to our next destination. Next stop, the Atlas Coal Mine National Historic Site. One of my favorite of the dinosaur statues around Drumheller area, the coal miner, and he's using his pterodactyl to check for gas. And there we go, some history on Atlas Coal Mine 3 and 4. Moved to this site in 1935-36, brought from the north side of East Coulee across the river. Employed over 300 people at its peak. Today, the most complete historic coal mine in Canada, home to the nation's last wooden tipple. 139 coal mines operated in the Drumheller Valley. And this is really cool. Toyota Land Cruiser here, doing a Pan American tour. Very cool. And this is why we left Mabel behind this weekend. Too many things that just weren't going to be pet friendly. So this is interesting. The Alberta Motor Association and Discover Alberta 100 Journeys, the 100 people, places, and events that highlight the character of Alberta. This is number 5 on the list. I didn't even know this list existed, so that'll be worth checking out. And check out Mr. Cute Dinosaur on an e-bike. Oh, yes. built and lived in this mud shack from 1917 to 1921 till he saved enough money to bring his family to Canada. Then this was their summer kitchen.
This thing that we want to have 20% persons of color.
Ricky, are we all clear? Yeah. Awesome. Let's do this. Ready? There was no bell.
There is a bell.
You kind of crank that like thing. You're more than welcome to like see what it feels like. I took the keys out, so it's not going anywhere.
So we are going to check out the East Coulee Museum, housed in this old school from 1930. I'm old and fragile. Please do not sit on me. The same can be said for me. Please do not open. There is nothing inside. I don't believe them, but I will adhere to the rules. So there you go. I didn't film a whole lot inside the school, not because it's not a cool building and not because it's not a great museum, because it really is a really good museum in such a small town. It really just comes down to museums. I don't know how to film them in any sort of way that makes them captivating for a video type presentation. You know, it either ends up me sitting there just showing random exhibits in silence, or it's me just reading a bunch of plaques and showing you a bunch of exhibits, and neither one really makes for compelling video. So that's why this section's a little short.